What tools would you put in your toolkit for clients who are not fluent in the art space? How do you sell art to a client and show them that there is value in having that take your breath away piece in their home? Why are we not talking about how art makes us feel? Well, you will not want to miss today's conversation with Dr. Stacey Denise and Mandy Theis, where we dive into two very different perspectives about art and design. Meet Dr. Stacey, a multifaceted artist whose journey has taken her from the world of medicine to the realm of contemporary digital art. She is a pioneering force in the world of interior design, bringing a remarkable fusion of medical expertise, color mastery, and emotional resonance to her transformative work. As a pediatric surgeon turned neuroaesthetic designer and contemporary new media expressionist, Dr. Stacey's unique background has greatly influenced her artistic vision. By the same token, meet Mandy. She's an atelier-trained artist, a former professor at the Florence Academy of Art, and a licensed K-12 art educator. She helps people learn to draw and paint realistically, no experience required. Do you love interior design but can't make the business side work? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Success by Design, mastering the business of interior design. Whether you want to elevate in your current interior design firm, start your own firm, or move the needle when it comes to your existing firm's trajectory, this is your masterclass, and I'm your host, Katie Erickson. Learn from my mistakes as I built a coast-to-coast, multi-million-dollar interior design firm. I share nearly 20 years of serving as a university professor of undergraduate and graduate business courses with you. And best of all, I bring in experts in all things business and interior design. Class starts now. Hey, ladies, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, how you doing, Katie?
Good. I'm so excited. Well, this is a roundtable, and as you can tell, we all are going to love to chat about all the things because this is going to be a great episode on art and why art matters in design for the person like Mandy who creates beautiful atelier pieces of art. Dr. Stacey's going to tell us why it matters, and hopefully we'll try not to talk all over each other, but it just might happen because we all love art. So, that's why we're here, right?
It's hard to keep the passion in check.
Exactly.
That's so true. Okay, so let's start with Mandy, just because your first step. What drew you to art, and how, for you, does art change design for residential interiors?
So just a little bit about what atelier training is, because I know that's an unfamiliar word for many people. It's basically the way artists were trained until about 100 years ago with the advent of modernisms and more abstract painting styles. So it used to be that you had to have the skills and techniques to draw and paint realistically if you wanted to be an engineer and build a bridge or any other type of thing. But also it's a way of seeing the world. It's a visual language, and learning how to draw and paint from a technical standpoint helps give you that visual language. And when I advocate for technical works to be included in interior design, it's often because there's so much to see, and that you see more and more every time that you look at a piece that was done by hand through the craft and knowledge of somebody with this atelier training, which is actually quite rare today to find. And so my school, the School of Atelier Arts, and other ateliers, we are working to save this knowledge kind of from extinction. In the 1980s, there were only like 2 places left in the world where you could still go to a school and learn these skills that Westerners had access to. So it's interesting to see how we kind of lost touch with these skills, and now they're experiencing a renaissance and are a bit of a countercultural movement in the art world.
It makes my heart sing because the art teacher in my kid's school just happened to have finished her atelier training in Italy last year.
At the Florence Academy of Art?
Yes.
Who's your art teacher? She might have been in the program I was teaching at.
Cynthia Noyd?
Yes. Oh my goodness, I didn't know you knew Cynthia.
It is such a small world. In fact, I will see her later today when I toddle into my kids' art class. And yeah, I do that every week. I'm on year 4. I love to volunteer in her classroom because I'm sitting in there as a designer, and my kids love it because I'm there, but I'm learning. I'm learning so much from the atelier method. I'm coming in there and I'm like, okay, fractals matter in design. Fractals matter in art. Oh, there's a moment. Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad I showed up for school today at my kids' elementary school, right? That's so funny. You know her.
Oh, of course I do. I mean, the atelier world is very small. So if you know an atelier trained person, it's one of those things that you're likely to know. But Cindy's wonderful. And she just finished the program I helped create with the Florence Academy of Art for a master's degree for art teachers. They could get this training in the summers. So for 3 summers, they can go and train and get their atelier training.
In fact, I was joking with her. I'm like, this summer's going to be a real letdown for you because you're not going to be in Europe, huh? Like you're going to be doing kids camps for my kids in art. Like, I hope you're real thrilled. She's like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yes. It was so good. Dr. Stacey, tell us how you found your way into art.
Very interesting. I've started off early on before I went into medical school, enjoying art, doing more, I would say, spoken art. And what I mean by that, like writing poetry, writing raps. And then after that, my mother was like, no, girlfriend, you go into medical school because you need to eat. And so, I went to medical school, and I went and did pediatric surgery. And I did pediatric surgery for almost 10 years. And then I was like, something was calling me back to go into art. And I love color. And color like speaks to the soul, as long as we still have a visual way for, retinas to connect to our occipital lobes. When we see color, it just does something to us.
It changes everything.
Exactly. I'm doing a project, quite actually, I noticed I'm going to come back and explain. I had a person in agriculture reach out to me because not only do I do interior design, I do the artwork and I do more art commissions. And, my whole focus is color psychology and neuroaesthetics and how we as humans perceive color and how it makes us feel. How can it regulate our nervous system so we can feel calm, creative, productive? But she was like, can you do some color psychology for my animals? And I'm like, oh, I never really thought about that. So I'm like doing some research. I'm like,
I never thought about that till you just said that.
I'm like, okay, this is different. So now I'm like doing research about how animals perceive color. And so I didn't know chickens have 4 cones. Like as humans, we have 3. RGB, the RGB scale.
Red, green, blue.
Exactly. Yep. They have 4 color cones. And so they get like...
So chickens see more colors than we do. That's kind of insulting. Can I just feel that for a minute? Like the chicken can...
Right?
I'm sorry, but I'm not okay with that, Dr. Stacey.
Because they forage. And so they rely on their eyes to be able to know where's food, what's good food, what's not good food, and mating. So it's just very fascinating. And like her horses and goats, they can only see blue and green. So it's been an interesting journey to know how not just we perceive color, but, mammals and the rest of the world around us. I took it for granted. I never really thought about that.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, Dr. Stacey makes an amazing point about the cones for receiving color in the eye because, I'm in the education world a lot. I'm teaching art to a lot of people. And so there are quite a few men that actually only have 2 cones for receiving color in their eye, which is creating the red-green color blindness. And there's this really rare condition where some humans, if you're a woman, can have 4 cones for receiving color. And it's called tetrachromacy. Yeah. And everybody in my world just like hopes that they'll have tetrachromacy. Maybe you do, Dr. Stacey. It's just really hard to test for.
Oh, that's insane. Well, it was interesting because we had Jason Bemis with the International Association of Color Consultants. I love Jason.
I tried with Jason. I did that program.
Isn't it wonderful? That's where we got our certification. It's just great. Yeah. But we were talking about that and he goes, well, it's kind of insulting to men because they're finding that over time, women are developing more ability to see better colors, even without having tetrachromacy per se. But we're getting to the point where we can see better colors and we can see different spectrums and we have more. And that isn't happening for men. He found that quite disconcerting. But I love how transparent and honest he was to even bring it up on our episode, which we'll put in the show notes. But we wanted to have the conversation. But then this week, we ended up having a client come forward who said, we want you to do a speakeasy, super fun. This is the idea of what we're thinking, what it looks like, feels like, vibes like. And we all went, there's no art. How are you doing this without art on the walls?
My heart.
My heart. Thank you, Mandy. Exactly. We were like, so we left some room in your budget because we think you might need some art over here. And like, they just hadn't thought of it. And I think like as designers, art can be, I don't want to say the stepchild, but it can be the afterthought. Like we care about the fabrics and the draperies and the flooring and the blah, 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 blah. And then, yes, we get into wallpapers. And then it's like, okay, what do we have left over for art?
Right.
And that is not okay for a number of reasons. One, because it's my passion and I'm saying it's not okay. But let's talk to the experts. Mandy, why is it important from an artist's perspective that as we're creating spaces, we provide canvases to you as an artist to put them in?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to purchase real art for your home. You have the reason of, quality over quantity, right? So I'm always astonished when I go into a multi-million-dollar home and there's prints on the wall. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like,
yeah,
you have this great opportunity, and it's a whole ecosystem too. It's not just, oh, you'll have a unique work of art that nobody else will ever have in their home that will change for you every time you see it because it's made with real hands on real surfaces with real materials. But also that you're participating in an ecosystem where you are, supporting an artist by purchasing that work, that they're able to create more things that are more beautiful that you could possibly also include in your home. And also the joy that it brings you. Having a real painting in your house is not the same as having a print. And I encourage anybody who doesn't believe that to go to a museum and to see how it feels different to look at a real painting versus a print. And also you take care of it and you're more careful about what you select, because when you're commissioning a painting or you're purchasing a painting, you're usually paying a price point of, not a whim, not something you want to throw out in the next season, but something that you actually connect with, that represents you, your personality, your dreams, your hopes, your goals, something to remind you of who you are and reflects back to you what matters in your life. And so people are much more careful when they're buying a real piece of artwork than, something that matches the couch.
Oh, totally. Instead of what's at Home Goods or what we're specifying as designers. I mean, take the time to build the relationships with the artists in your community and go find them.
Well, just that's also a lost art. So it used to be that the way art was collected, there was an understanding and a system that people learned, like their parents bought real art, they learned how to buy real art or whatever. But with this weird disruption of modernism, where we separated technique from quality or what the value was of a painting, things got really confusing and a lot of people started opting out. The closest a lot of people came in the 80s to buying real art was a Thomas Kinkade painting that had,
no.
Right.
No offense, Thomas.
Well, I'm actually a fan of Thomas Kinkade, not because I particularly like his art. He was a technically skilled painter, but, he probably had a greater influence than any of the famous artists that were his contemporaries, because people actually resonated. His message of joyful cottage in the woods resonated with enough people that he was sold on the market for billions of dollars. He was actually traded in stock form, on the market for billions of dollars. That's how many people were buying his work, because it meant more to them than a lot of, I don't know, the shark and formaldehyde that was being promoted as high-end art at the time. So I think that there's a desire in the community for real art, but there's a lack of knowledge on how to find artists, what to pay. People are intimidated. They're afraid to ask if they don't know. Artists are afraid to put their prices out there. And so there's a lost art of actually how to purchase real art.
We often don't think about that. And I want to come back to that. You made such a good point about there's an actual exchange that happens, not with a print, but with a real piece of art. Dr. Stacey, as a doctor, can you speak to that? What are the physiological components that happen for us as interior designers, because that's really our audience, as you're going out and building those relationships, to Mandy's point, and procuring pieces and really trying to create people's homes that hug them, as Michelle Lampant says. What is the physiological and the biological result of good real art?
I have to preface that, another layer to what I do besides interior design are art commissions. And I can respect where you're coming from, Mandy, about the real art comment. But I work in the digital realm and the artificial intelligence. And I think that incorporating that as an aspect too. When you say real art, I think where the connection lies is when you go to these kind of cookie cutter, and I put it in air quotes, cookie cutter, Home Goods and Kirkland's, and everybody's getting that mass produced thing because they don't really understand what it takes to create a piece of art. So it can be, on a canvas, it could be on wood, it could be digital, and printing on different materials. But capturing the essence of somebody and really getting to know, when you do a commission piece, Mandy, I'm sure you're talking to your clients. You want to know why are you coming to me to commission a piece of art? What brings you joy? What aggravates you? What are your hobbies? Right. I just did a commission for a guy who never thought that he could be an art collector. He's like, I'm a blue collar worker and I've been intimidated by art. And I said, you shouldn't have to be intimidated. So we had a whole interview and worked through the whole process. And I said, well, what speaks to you? He's like, I like to travel. I like jazz. I like the Lakers. I was like, okay, well, we can mix that. And so I created a piece that, spoke to his love of the Bengals and the love of the Lakers and jazz, and put that into a work that spoke to him. And when he got it, he was just like, wow. I'm not that traditional painter, but he was just like, wow, this talks to me. These colors resonate with me because these are all the things that we had a discussion about. So I think that's where that cookie cutter art has that disconnect. Not only the emotional and psychological and emotional memory, cognitive part of art, but then the visual part of bringing the colors home. So I think the colors are like the icing and the cherry on top of a well-baked cake of knowing, what it is that should be in that particular piece. And I think that speaks to what you said, Kate, about art as an afterthought, right? We worry about the fabrics, the furniture, the flooring, right? The wall colors. But okay, now how do you bring it all home full circle so that when somebody walks into a room, I always use the analogy of a hotel. We like going to hotels and resorts because when we walk in, we never think about it, but we feel good. Like when you walk, you're like, but you know what it is.
Yes,
When you walk in, you're like, oh my God, what is it? It's because they took the time, not only just with the decor of the colors and the furnishings and the textures and the textiles and the art too. And it seamlessly works together that you don't even have to think about it. But when your body walks into it, it knows I'm happy.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, Dr. Stacey, because something that I've noticed just from being really specifically in the painting world, because I'm not a interior designer like you both are. As far as the painting world goes, there have been these ebb and flows of where painting was heavily considered as part of a design and times that it was more of an afterthought. So I'm thinking of like the arts and crafts movement when, William Morris was like, have nothing in your home that is not useful or beautiful to you. Like it was really integrated. And a lot of painters at that time were almost intentionally making decorative paintings that intentionally fit into a specific space that was designed for that painting. And there was this synergy between designers and painters, during the arts and crafts movement. And then that really kind of separated for a while. And now, I think people are seeing the importance of what Dr. Stacey is saying, that why be in a space 24/7 and not make it feel good to you? Like we spend so much time in our homes, especially after the pandemic, like a new color, a thoughtful design can just bring so much joy to your life. It's not another thing that's going to bring you joy. It's a better arrangement of the colors in your space and in the objects in your space. And being careful about which ones you let into your life, because they are taking up your mental bandwidth. And so why are you letting an inane piece of whatever artwork take up your mental bandwidth? I love what you said about that digital artwork, Dr. Stacey, that you were making a unique piece to bring out the favorite memories for your client. And so I love this idea that artists, like people like myself, are thinking more about creating paintings for specific spaces, and that designers are thinking about specific paintings as part, designing spaces around paintings. And that really excites me that those two worlds are starting to get closer together again after spending a fair amount of time apart.
Too far and too long, I would argue. Are you tired of trying to keep up with the latest trends in colors and fabrics and still run your business? I am going to share an industry secret tool that has become a powerhouse for our firm. Meet the Nel Colore Color Book. This color and texture forecast resource was developed by an incredible Italian designer, Nello Morelli, who is a worldwide influencer in all these areas and even more. Luxury brands from Milan to Paris consult with him. And now we are partnering with Nello to bring his expertise stateside and set you apart from your competition. This Nel Colore Color Trend Book includes sociological contents, color combinations, color notation systems, and forecasts of what you need up to 2 years in advance, so you can truly impress your clients and not have to worry about keeping tabs on the latest and greatest when it comes to trends. Design is based on our ability as interior designers to anticipate people's needs, wants, and social behaviors. This talent of anticipating the best colors, paints, and materials are what sets us apart as an industry and sets your work apart from the competition. This is why we are thrilled to share with you the Nel Colore Color Trend Book, found exclusively in the showroom of The Studio on our website. We are providing the link for you in the show notes. What would you say to our interior designers who are like, I hear you, I know this, I agree, I don't know how? How do I sell it to my client that there is value in having, like personally, I'd rather have one incredible commissioned piece of art than have a bunch of knockoffs from Home Goods, right? Or whatnot. Let's just go for the one statement piece that's take my breath away, to borrow the song, but that really does take your breath away. How, as a designer, do we build that into the budget and sell it to the client when there's still, I feel like, some reticence, kind of to what Mandy was saying about Dr. Stacey's client, who was like, I'm a blue collar worker. I don't have any business commissioning art, right? No. Hold the phone. You do. You really, really do. And it doesn't have to be ridiculously stupid in price point. That being said, people who are hiring interior designers are usually doing so because they are buying back their time. They're affluent and they want it back, right? So what tools would you put in this toolkit of designers when they're trying to position this for a client who may not be as into art as they think they need to be in order to commission? Because I feel like it's kind of had like this, a little bit of a stodgy, bougie, you have to be that person to commission art, right? And that's not true.
Well, I think a good entry point into that is actually not commissioning artwork and to purchase artwork from artists that you trust that already exists, because that's a lot safer, especially for some if they've never had real art in their home, or, finding designers or artists that are working at a lower price point where it feels like it's not quite as scary for that first piece. I have done many commissions myself. I am in a world where people tend to commission a lot of paintings, and I've actually recently gone to no more commissions. So I no longer offer commissions on paintings. Yeah. If a designer comes to me and is like, oh, I really like your peonies, do you have anything in this size? I'll be like, no, I might paint some, but I'm not going to follow a specific guide. I call it my peony purgatory painting period. I ended up painting peonies for 2 years because one peony commission led to another. Now I'm like, I'll paint them when I feel like it, and I'm not taking any more commissions for peonies. But, other people do really, really well with commissions, and they really enjoy making something specific for that person. So I think you need to have a stable of artists, just like any gallery would have a stable of artists, and know the personality of the artist you're working with and the personality of the client that you're working with, and match them appropriately, just like you would a couch with the right client, right?
I love that. That's a great tip. Find the artist you like, buy what already exists, or help your clients buy what already exists. It takes the intimidation out of it.
I come from a different school. I'm sorry. That's why I do art and design together.
That's okay. That's why you're all on this round table, because it's so different.
The reason why I do art and design together is because it's been a disconnect. It's like, I'm going to use the medical world as an example. That's like when a patient comes and, as a surgeon, talking, and I'm speaking surgeonese, to my patients. And they're like, okay. And then you go to the family doc and they're like, oh, and it's a disconnect, right? Instead of getting back to the essence of the patient. So it's the patient. And now we have to come to the patient or the client, commission a piece, hiring a designer to work with their home. They're coming to us because of our expertise. And even though I know we have camp art and camp design, I don't know why, because to me, art and design are the same.
Absolutely.
Art and is design. Design is art. Frank Gehry is like my role model, and he's done it all, right? And uses technology, in ways that we just got our hands on as a society, OpenAI, Midjourney, all these tools that we have to incorporate. But he's been doing that all over the world, and people go and look at his work all over the world. I think it takes people who are like you, Mandy, to say, hey, you don't have to be a Sotheby's or Christie's. It's not this kind of party.
Yes.
Art is a right. I mean, we've been doing cave paintings since we've been on the planet. So I'm just saying, in terms of art, is something that we do. It can be painting, it could be drawing, it could be photography, singing, poetry. That's what I was telling you. I came into art because I like to write. All of it is art. Right. And it's a form of abstraction. And that's how we speak to each other. People don't think of it like that, but that's how we communicate with each other.
Absolutely. And just to your Christie's and Sotheby's point, I didn't know this until I was with a really wealthy collector one time, but they have everything displayed. Anybody can go and look at the exhibits that they have before they auction it off. And something that I didn't know existed, they have a lot of really good paintings, that are unsigned, and so that they can't sell them at a premium. And they have kind of like a online auction or a quiet auction. And I'm talking phenomenal paintings that are going for a couple $1,000s, right? It's not so inaccessible, but it's just not known about. So like I encourage anybody the next time they're in New York City, go into Christie's and Sotheby's, go look at whatever, show exhibit they have up and go find these unsigned works that they can't sell at the premium because they don't have the brand label signature. And just pick your favorite artwork. Like it's way more accessible than you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a novel thought.
The nice thing about technology, I'm sorry, I've always been in love with technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like where you were talking about not being able to marry a particular piece with the interior design. Now that we can scan, like I use canvas.io. And with iPhones and iPads, you can scan a room, take that bad boy in a SketchUp and then insert that art and say, hey, does this work? This is what we're doing with your interior design. Do you like this piece? No. And all you got with a click of a button, you can just keep changing it till they're like, oh yeah, I like that.
Absolutely.
And now you can go all in, and go crazy. Because once you have all that laid out and like you were talking about art being an afterthought, if you're thinking about the complete plan, so like when I'm doing an interior design, I have the color palette part, the color psychology section, the neuroaesthetic section. In the neuroaesthetic section is the art. We had a conversation up front. Like, when you're thinking about art, what are you thinking about? And it could be a painting. It could be a sculpture. I mean, it could be a water feature. What does art mean to you? Not me. What does it mean to you? And that's why I was saying when my client was like, oh, I'm a blue collar worker. What does art mean to you? And he started talking about, I was like, we can make that happen. So I think that people have this vision because the mass media projects that what art should be. And if you're not owning this particular piece, then, like you said, you have a whole bunch of pieces that go unauctioned, right? That are the fraction of the cost, that are beautiful pieces. But because it's not Basquiat, you don't get the light of day.
Right.
You're in the closet.
No, I'm just saying. And if people thinking like, you got a huge interior design project and people thinking they need to have Andy Warhol on the walls. They think that. But I'm like, no.
Well, it's a brand, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when I talk to designers and I'm like trying to encourage them, use real art in your designs, you can do it. Something that comes up as a barrier of entry for some of the designers I've talked to is that they don't have time to like track down and have a stable of artists and, be aware of it. But one like hack, if you will, is to work with schools, like universities in particular, like build a relationship with professors there. And they are always feeding you their students' work and their work and what they think is best. And like you can often go to an exhibit with like 20 artists' work and you can like pick up stuff. I don't want to say so cheap, but like these artists don't yet fully realize the true value of their works and they're looking for that confidence of their first sales and it's a win-win, right? So find your local atelier, find your local university art program, and you only need a relationship with the person that designs the exhibits, right? You don't have to worry about being friends with everybody. Just stay in their loop and show up at an art opening with 20 potential artists and you'll find some things that work for you.
Well, and I think what a lot of people don't realize too, and what we have found is there's a lot of cities now that are pulling together art directories, and their art commissions are pulling together art directories of artists that are doing great work that have been vetted, and they put them on their website. We do this with Oklahoma City all the time. They have an incredible art commission. City of Norman in Oklahoma has another one.
That's awesome.
And they've got a whole digital Rolodex.
Wow.
Like Rolodex. Oh my gosh, I'm dating myself. But don't judge that term. It's Friday. But you can go through, and what's so great is you can sort them by what type of medium do you want? Do you want a fiber artist, a wood artist? Do you want something canvas, metal? You name it. It's already been there for you. And so find your art commission too and say, what are you doing? And especially if you need bigger pieces, like in the commercial world, we end up dealing with a lot of public art and we need huge pieces. It was so fun to create a beautiful car, full-sized car out of tubes. The artist we worked with was amazing. It's suspended from cables hanging over Route 66's glass house. I mean, like, how fun is that? And so I think that, if you start looking, what I'm hearing you both say, you don't have to look hard. It's going to be easier than you think. And here's the route to it. Mandy, I want to go back to the Sotheby's comment and Christie's comment. Do you have a link that allows us to go to those unnamed pieces or unsigned pieces that are constantly running that we could possibly include in our show notes?
I will see if they have it listed online. They have rotating exhibits. But if you show up in person, there's a wall that they dedicate to it. So
it's
you
always
go to
there.
Sotheby's. Every time I've been there, it's been there. So I don't want to promise that it's there every time. But you should go to these places. I mean, they're amazing exhibits, and they're often artwork that you'll never see again because they go into private homes afterwards, right? So it's kind of a cool, little opportunity. I'll see if I can find you links, because I know that the smaller paintings, they do online auctions and silent auctions, or, other auction forms for those. But it's way more accessible. I wish that galleries didn't feel like they had to be intimidating to be serious, right? Because there's a lot of people that can afford and want what's in there, but are stopped, like what Dr. Stacey's example was, by these ideas of, oh, that art isn't for me, right? And I think, and especially in this age, like, all the technology that we have, there's no reason we can't tear down those barriers.
I so agree. In fact, it's interesting. I love taking my kids into galleries. I get it. Kids are touchy. Mine are 9 and 7. We've had the talk, look, no touch, look, no touch, look, no touch. I mean, we could all be retired for every dollar of look, no touch. Right. But it's always really hard as a mom, because I always feel pushback from gallery owners of like, oh, you're bringing a kid in. Don't touch, don't touch. I'm like, I know, I deeply respect your work. By the same token, I can't raise up the next generation of kids that are not going to be intimidated by art, who will do the commissions, who will appreciate it for what it is, if I don't bring them in now. So like, that's always, I think, a really tough thing too, is like, we do want to raise up that next generation. And I think when we do create homes as designers, that we have an opportunity to provide a space and set an example for the kids that are living in those homes, of the value of seeing, if it's the Lakers with the Bengals, not only was this what my parents loved, but they loved it enough that they put it in their home, and it's a representation of them, which is a really beautiful thing. I also think art is a really good gateway drug for color, for people who are afraid of color. We all love color. I'm looking at your dress, Dr. Stacey, and your backdrop, and I'm looking at Mandy's backdrop, which is totally atelier. And I'm just thinking through that, like, there's so many people that are intimidated by fine art or by color, but that this gives them an opportunity. You may not do an entire sofa, but maybe we can get you into an 8x10, or maybe we can get you into something smaller that allows us to bring that into the home. How does that become a selling point, and how do designers use the introduction of color through art as a selling point to their clients?
When I think of using the color, as a selling point, right, especially because a lot of the trends, and I mean, we have Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore to thank for these things, the grays, like the whole decade of gray, beige, all these, and it's just like,
or grayish.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so when do we add that spark of color? I mean, people want it, but like you said, they're afraid to use it. So having somebody who can tie in all the elements to a room, to that focal point, right? Just like you said, I mean, when I'm talking about color and art and design as well, this is releasing endorphins, oxytocin, our feel-good hormones. So you want to feel good, some serotonin cooking in there. So let's have that. I mean, you don't need the program. I'm just saying, if you surround yourself and you use the art that speaks to your client, and whatever the art piece is, it has to resonate, so that when they see it, then and it can be a whole jazzy piece with all these loud colors, and that might be the only thing that they feel safe with, right? Because a lot of some people, if you're not careful, it's a lot of neurodivergent autism that has not been diagnosed, a lot of ADHD, and certain colors will jazz them up. So that's where I'm saying it's important for us to be able to chat with our clients and say, hey, what drives you? Like sometimes, and I don't get me wrong, because sometimes, and I've worked with designers before I even got into the business, and it's like we get carried away. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about that client.
Oh, that is such a good moment. Yes.
And bring them out that. Yeah, I'm just saying, because sometimes we go over the client and start doing our thing, and then it's like, and then it's not a good experience. And I'm like, you want to leave knowing that you helped change a life, not just I got a paycheck or put a color or, a wallpaper. I changed a life. And when they come home, they're going to be happy. Yeah. I want you to be happy and feel safe at the end of the day. And if you had that feeling, I did my job.
I love that so much. I'd like to just point something out that I see, from my training in the atelier world when it comes to color. And that is that we have these two extremes, like Dr. Stacey was saying, like, what's this grayish, beige, gray, everywhere all the time. And then I love all this color that's like coming in too. But in the atelier world, we say that every color has 3 attributes: a value, how light and dark it is; a chroma, the intensity of the color; and a hue, which is, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And when I go into the paint stores, I see grayish, like super, super neutral things. Neutral is the opposite of chroma, and super, super chromatic things. But I feel like there's this whole range between the most chromatic and the most neutral that has these really subtle, beautiful qualities that is like missing from the conversation. And I don't know how that happened or why that happened. Especially chromatic darks are missing. So like there's no such thing as black. There's only like a really dark red, a really dark blue, a really dark purple. That's why your black pen, if it gets water on it, it runs blue or red. But to have not just a black, but like a red black, right? Like where's that color in the paint store, right? Where is it?
Yep. And we fight really hard with that because, so the flip side of that, especially doing a lot of exterior design, once you put that color out in the sun, I'm thinking there's a specific Sherwin-Williams color, that black goes purple because that sun just brings out all those undertones, right? And sometimes I just want like a really true, beautiful black, which is why I keep coming back to tricorn black, because it's a true blue black. But you're right. I mean, like, where do we find those richer tones? And there are trends. Trends are valuable. We've talked about them a lot on the show. But by the same token, we're missing out on some really beautiful colors. I'll call it the in-between.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least in the pigment industry too, a lot of the new colors that are being discovered. So like we didn't have a cadmium red until the 1800s, right? So we're getting brighter and brighter colors all the time. We're getting darker colors because our eyes can actually see lighter lights and darker darks than we have pigment that can achieve that.
That's fascinating.
With these technological advancements.
For real.
Yeah, for real. Like if I'm trying to paint your picture, there are darker blacks in your darker darks, I'll call them, because there's no such thing as black, as we discussed, that my eye can see, that we actually don't have pigment that's as dark as what you see. So, people painting realistically, they're not just slavishly copying what they see. They have to recreate relationships. So if you want something to feel as dark as what you see it in life, you have to exaggerate the lightness of what's next to it. But with the pigment industry, we have these new inventions all the time, but they're primarily driven by the makeup industry and the car industry. So we have
the revenue generators.
We're brighter and brighter reds, right? But do you know what color is massively behind? Is like a coral, right? Because the car company doesn't care about coral, and apparently the makeup company doesn't care as much about coral. So we have these like really chromatic reds and these really chromatic yellows, but that orangey kind of red coral color, like it's way less chromatic, the brightest coral that we have.
Okay, so it's so funny you should say that. I was straight up looking for earrings the other day in coral to match some shoes that I have that I absolutely love. And I went into Target because I was in a barn burn in a hurry, and there was pink and there was orange. I was so frustrated, and I just stood there, which you as colored people will totally appreciate. And I was like, I just need you to mush them together, and I would have the perfect pair of earrings. That's all I need for this one engagement. Why isn't this here? But that's interesting. So is it economics that's driving that because the makeup and car industries make so much money?
I keep trying to convince like a billionaire that wants a one-off car to like commission a neon coral color. Please, would you do that? The billionaire's listening
that would
to
be
this.
So pretty.
Because no one else would ever have that color. It could be your invention, and then the rest of the world could have like a chromatic pigment that was comparable to the yellows and reds and greens that we have out there.
That would be so beautiful. And it goes back again to color psychology, which I love, Dr. Stacey, that you talked about the dopamine and all of the positive feelings we get from color. I don't think people fully understand that when you're looking at a piece of real art, especially not a print, because that's RGB limited, right? Or CMYK, depending on what you're printing.
But I do agree that Dr. Stacey, what she's saying about the digital art, like, when artwork is made for someone or is unique to that person, I do think she's right. It's not just the physicality of a painting.
No, it totally speaks to them. And as those colors are entering into their brain and running through those eyes, hitting the cones, registering to the optic nerve, I don't think we fully appreciate that how whatever is on, it creates a physiological response in our bodies. It's not that you're just looking at it. It triggers chemical releases in your body.
Because we don't talk about it, right? I'm just saying we don't bring that into a discussion when we talk about art. I mean, it's not like, oh, what do you see? Oh, I see this. I see that. It's not like, what do you feel? Do you feel relaxed? Is your heart? Where do you usually get stressed? Do you feel it there? And we don't talk about art in those terms. It's always, what was the artist thinking? Like, I went to some Francis Bacon exhibition. I mean, that's some interesting art. I'm like, okay, it's all good.
It's like bubble faces.
Yeah. And the color palette, right? And the color palette is like on the grayish chromatic side, right? I mean, it's very muted.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, okay. But everybody's like, oh, well, what was he thinking? Was he did? I'm like, well, how's it making you feel? How do you feel right now looking at that piece? And I'm just saying, but how do you feel? Not that somebody was like, okay, this is an expensive work of art and therefore you should have it. And because you don't have it and own it, does that make you feel less than? Are you a part of the club? I'm not trying. Listen, I don't have any problem with folks that have the means and the people that don't. But every time and I think about art and I talk to just and people in general, it's not accessible. Why is that? Because only rich people or Christie's and Sotheby's, they dominate that.
Yeah. So what you're really talking about is like the branding of artists, because if you take skill out of it, like why is Damien Hirst considered a high-end artist, but Joe Schmo off the street is not, right? And it's no longer about skill. That's been taken out of the equation. So it's about collecting brands. So, he's collected by Charles Saatchi. Charles Saatchi is a major collector. Charles Saatchi is a brand. If he collects your art, then all of a sudden the price of your artwork goes up. Being sold at Christie's and Sotheby's is a brand. If you have artwork that sells there, your brand goes up, et cetera, et cetera. White Cube Gallery sells your work. That's a branded gallery, right? And of course, it doesn't make sense to anybody else because it's like a Louis Vuitton bag or something. No bag is actually worth $50,000. It's a brand, a statement.
Exactly.
Perceived value. But unfortunately, this creates, exactly what Dr. Stacey is talking about, this disconnect between people that feel like they're allowed to have art. They need permission to have art or permission to have art that means something to them. I'll never forget the time I took my dad to an art gallery and, it was like one of those white canvases and he's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, you don't have to get it. Like there's nothing to get in this particular piece. If the artist isn't communicating to you with the art, then it's no longer art, in my opinion. And might be philosophy, kind of the Tom Wolfe in his book, wrote about the painted word. It might be philosophy with an illustration, but unless, in my opinion, as a painter, if the painting is not communicating the artist's intent to the viewer using only a visual experience, it is not visual artwork. It might be philosophy, it might be a combination of other things. But if you need an essay to explain it, it is no longer visual art. It is written.
That's a really great way to put it. Well, it takes us right back to Dr. Stacey's client who's like, I want Bingles. I want Lakers. I like jazz. I like Moody. Oh my gosh. When you created that piece of art for him and he saw it and he had his aha, wow.
He was like, I don't even want to hang it. He was like, I'm scared to hang it. I was like, put it up on the wall. It's all put it up on the wall and display it.
See, that's what it's about.
I'm both heartened and saddened by that. Like I'm heartened that somebody that thought that art wasn't for them, found an artist and a piece that worked for them. And I'm also really sad that somehow we've convinced the general populace that they're not good enough for art. Like that's a tragedy. Anybody can access art. It's just, not buying into the status symbol brands and looking for art that actually resonates.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, do it, Dr. Stacey.
What you're talking about, Mandy, right? The status symbol and not having accessibility. Now I'm thinking about, what is it? Generation Alpha?
Yep.
Right? They haven't bridged this generational technological divide, right? Because we still have a camp that thinks that it's nothing against that. That's just how people think that, having a print is the only art. Now we're moving into VR, AR, right? And all the generative AI and what comes with that. And I think it's Apollo Art. They have a whole digital platform. So if you go get the Sony frame TVs or Samsung, and I'm sure it's going to be a whole new, group of manufacturers who develop these appliances to where, okay, you might have a younger crowd that they don't even care about having a canvas in the home. But guess what? I want a screen. And now, you can build that in the wall. So before you even think about doing that, make sure that you hide those wires and let's talk about how we're going to construct that so that, where it comes back to that ontological design, right? We design for the environment and the art also speaks to the environment so that we forward thinking about that. And I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm fascinated with that. So I'm thinking okay, I want to get some art installation. When I'm talking about installation, I want to get these big screens in there. And that way now you have art that's successful, right? Because now I can digitally upload and you can, have a different piece that speaks to you, or you can put like a recipe. I want, blah, blah, blah. And then we spit it out. And then guess what? You got it. And it may not speak to you or me, but it speaks to that person. And they feel it.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, for me, it's feeling. That's my big thing. How do you feel? And I think everybody deserves the right to just feel good and feel safe. That's it.
Yes, I agree with that so much. I was being a guest instructor in a public school classroom, and they had just gotten one of those VR sets, and they were like, Mandy, like paint a scene. And I was like, it was so cool. It was so much fun. Like I made this like whole dinosaur landscape in this 3D world. And, like it was a magical feeling to be able to create that way. So even though I mostly, mix dirt with oil and rub it on woven linen for a living, I do have a massive appreciation for technology.
That is cracking me up. Well, and going back to the story I shared originally about my kids who, like Dr. Stacey mentioned, are Gen Alpha, and the fear of taking them into a gallery. So last Black Friday, it was so fun. Went and got the Samsung Art TV because I was like, I need to give them art in a safe place. Back to being safe. We have had the best conversations. They understand pointillism. We've talked about Degas.
Ooh.
Today we had, who was on? And it was filled with massive nudity. And my 9-year-old was sitting at breakfast and she goes, well, that's uncomfortable and offensive. And she looks up at the TV and I was like, well, let's talk about that for a minute. Why do you find that? Why do you find that offensive? Like, why do you, and it was such a good moment because, to the point, I love Atelier. I love that we have technology now. We live 2.5 hours east of Seattle. We do not have the Smithsonian next door. So this gives me the opportunity to pull in these things and expose another generation because that is my passion. We have got to raise up a generation of kids who loves art and beauty. Right? Because that then will support the next generation of artists.
In the art world, beauty is a bad word. Like you wouldn't believe how many interviews I go on or podcasts that I go on because real art isn't beautiful. It's supposed to be political. It's supposed to be, like in the art world, like in the hardcore art world, beauty is a bad word. And that's why I love so much working with designers and people that appreciate. Right. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we bombarding ourselves with ugly? Like, it's like the hair shirt. Like, why are we visually assaulting our senses needlessly when we can have beauty in our life?
Beauty comes in all forms. What's beautiful, like the gentleman who wanted the Bengals and the Lakers, I wouldn't put that in my own home. That was sheer and utter beauty to him. It spoke to his heart. I mean, it's interesting. I wonder how they're defining beauty because beauty to me is anything that resonates with you at a soul level. That's beauty. Like when something strikes you and you just sit back and you have that moment of, it's almost like a force of nature where it pushes you back because you're so inspired. That's beauty. I'm so sad to hear that, Mandy. That back to breaking my heart. That breaks my heart because we want
don't spend time in the high-end art world podcast.
Well, you can tell they haven't invited me to Christie's.
Don't go there.
Interested.
You don't need an invitation. Just go. You belong there.
See, I even think I need an invitation. Oh my gosh. What were we going to say, Dr. Stacey?
No, I was just saying that's a part of the neuroaesthetics.
Yeah.
How we see beauty. I mean, that's the whole science of neuroaesthetics. How do we see beauty? Like we take it for granted, but I mean, we need it. Like our brains are like wired for it.
And Dr. Stacey, I was stalking you before we got on this call, and you had this room that had this like velvet bluish couch, like, and I'm just like, it struck me. I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful couch than this couch that you had designed in this space. And I'm like, I was like, I wonder if I can afford Dr. Stacey.
Ladies, this has been such a good conversation. Give me a nugget that our interior designers who are listening to this, what do you want them to take away from today's conversation and go forth into their respective modalities with? Dr. Stacey, let's start with you.
I think the same way you think about, leather or that wall paint color, you should be incorporating art into the discussion early.
Ooh, I like that.
And just know that it can be more than just canvas. You have metal, you have wood, you do have prints, you have canvas. I mean, you have a plethora. It's just a matter of how to have that conversation with your client up front. It should just be a part. It's like a prescription. Here's your prescription. We got a prescription for happy. So let's talk about how we're going to do that.
I love that.
And that's all I'm going to say.
That's perfect. Or if you're Katie, you get a TV so that your kids can see it.
There you go. That's a part of the prescription too.
I'm just saying, you buy yourself a Samsung 65-inch and you go, this is what we got and we're going to make it work. Exactly. I'm just saying.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. Mandy, what would you say? What's your nugget?
I would say that I've seen designers, be really inspired by a couch or a chair or a lamp, and they design a room around that. And so I would encourage designers, when they come across a painting that they are struck by, that they consider designing a room around the painting.
I love that idea. And it doesn't have to be informed by the client. They may never see that painting even, which is really a crazy thought. Right. I will never forget a client who brought forth a pillow back when I did residential design before I switched to commercial. And she said, I want my whole room designed around this pillow. And I was like, I wish everybody came with a pillow. It makes life so much easier. All of a sudden, we have a texture idea. We have a color idea. We have a palette, like all of these things. And I love the idea of using art as that. Like, what if we started our consultations with, let's go through some art so I understand what camp you're in. We'll design out of that. What would that look like? And what would that manifest as an end result? I think it would be spectacular to put it, you said, Dr. Stacey Startley, but put it on the front end of design instead of on the back end, and really show our clients this is accessible. It's not just for invitation only. Ladies, a fabulous conversation. Thank you both so much for your time. It was just amazing and just a treasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to your Coaching Corner. I remember when I was leaving residential design and wanting to segue into commercial design. And one of my favorite parts of residential design was art. And I thought, oh gosh, it's just going to feel all corporate-y in the commercial world. It's not going to have the same interpersonal play and whatnot. But as I began to explore the world of art in a commercial setting, I realized I just get to play on a bigger scale, right? So instead of a life-sized bison, it's life and a half so that it can really fill out this space. Or it's commissioned pieces that are 6-7 figures because we have the option to do so with the budget, which is really fun as well. Wherever you're at in your art journey with your clients, don't be afraid to think outside the box. Find those relationships that we're talking about. Curate the students that are up and coming and give them a chance to really showcase their canvases, literally and figuratively. Don't be afraid. Step out there and do it, and you'll be surprised at the beauty you find along the way. And that's the closing bell. I hope you've gathered valuable insight from our conversation today, equipping you to thrive in your interior design business. Don't forget to hit that follow button to never miss an episode. And if you have burning questions or specific topics you're curious about, explore our episode library, or better yet, book a strategy session directly with me at colorworks.coach. Until next time, see you in the studio. It's our virtual community, and the link is below.